You've seen us make predictions before on this show, whether it's individual stories, and we kind of have some thoughts that we think might pan out. But this is going to be a 2026 prediction mega episode. Ray and I both have lists that both talk about realistic predictions that we think are probably most likely maybe going to happen in 2026 in the next calendar year. And then we also have what we're calling moonshot predictions, things that are like maybe a little more unlikely, maybe a little bit more iceberg, tinfoil hat-y that we're going to get into. The way that we're going to structure this is Ray's going to give his list. I'm going to react to each one as he goes down the list. Then I'll do mine. Then we'll go on some moonshots and just kind of like kick the ball around with some of those ideas. This is the Repertoire Report, a special episode of the Repertoire podcast where we kind of go into industry stories, things on CPG and grocery and restaurant and chef culture and all the things that are shaping the industry. Ray, this is going to be an exciting one. I don't think we've done a format like this before.
No.
This is your suggestion, and I'm really, really excited to dig in. Where do you want to start us?
All right, we'll start with my realistic predictions. We'll talk through these and we'll go to yours. So we'll start out first with mine. And my first prediction for 2026 is that restaurants continue their push into grocery and that more restaurant brands will have grocery offerings. I'm thinking like Carbone in New York City has a wonderful line of jarred sauce that is at an elevated price point. Beyond that, I think as grocery capture and spending start to be more appealing, restaurants really just find different ways to enter the CPG space and realm. And so you're going to see these lead restaurants in their industry, or you'll see it locally in local grocery stores of them making CPG products that then incentivize customers to come to their restaurant. So I think restaurants are going to lean more into CPG to not only combat where people are purchasing more, but also to just get their brand out there and get more brand awareness as the grocery and really awesome CPG adjacent products kind of start to overtake the dollar of consumers that are constrained in spending right now. Your thoughts?
I'm the most interested to see how these deals are structured, mostly because I think the way that we've seen some of these pan out with how other restaurants have kind of, you mentioned Carbone, have gone into this. It's very much so been, we're going to launch it with the brand kind of like on the label. And then from a distribution perspective, I think like Momofuku did this, right? So like they did their line of, I think it was like salts. They had 3 different salts. And then they launched into kind of like, okay, well, we're going to have noodles now. And then it became this thing of like the formulation is changing. The way that they're using co-packers is different all the time. And then we've seen this with like brands like Rayo's, not a restaurant brand, but something that has been like a consumer story of that gets acquired. And so that is ultimately something that builds up so much potential that now a private equity firm or a larger food company comes in and buys it, and then they change the formulation and the quality goes down. And so I'm very interested to see how the life cycles of these products, quote unquote, go. And is it something that actually just stays in-house for the restaurant? And now they have somebody on the team who's responsible for, like products. I think that as much as I know that Ray, you're, have pushed back on Noma in the past, I think they are going to be one of the maybe pioneers in this because Noma Projects is something that they are playing incredibly close to the chest because I think they see the value of having a retail CPG in grocery stores with e-commerce kind of like flair to some of these businesses.
How crazy would it be if you saw next year the Aviary put out a cocktail kit and it's like make the Aviary cocktails at home and maybe not the crazy ones, but some like experiential cocktails that a consumer can make at home. I think that grocery is going to have to be entered. Like restaurants are going to have to take it more seriously with the amount of money being spent. It's projected next year that consumers are going to be spending even more on grocery, not just like dollar spend per item, but actually getting like different items as well. And so I'm really, really bullish on this idea of restaurants entering the grocery store.
All right. What else?
So next, I believe that drive-through coffee will be the winning concept in 2026, whereas maybe McDonald's or the fast food one this year. I think drive-through coffee will be the concept that wins in 2026. The price for me, my reasoning is the price point is just right for consumers with lower budgets. I also think that we're seeing a social trend, and I don't hear it talked about as much. But I don't know if in Seattle there's these like drive-through coffee shops. Like here we have Seven Brew and whatnot, and the line is like continuously forever long, and cars are sitting in there 20, 30 minutes at a time. And I think personally that instead of where maybe my age when I was out of high school going into college, like maybe my age when I got my license, I was going to a Chipotle and hanging out with friends. I think the new way that people are going to hang out in the younger generations going to be sitting in a Seven Brew line with their friends and being on their phones and sitting in line for 20 to 30 minutes. I think the price point is just right for consumers with lower budgets that still want to go out and get something. And I know that like you could push back and be like, well, this is like more expensive coffee. It's like dessert coffee. It's fun. But it's not that you're looking at the price point from a coffee perspective, but as an overall experience perspective. And if you and your friends can go get a $7 per person item and spend 30 to 40 minutes enjoying that item in the car or waiting in line because like the lines are insane, I think this is actually going to be a big change in consumer behavior. I think we're going to get to a point where drive-through coffee is the experience a lot of people are going for, and it's going to be a very good win, a small experience win for consumers with tighter budgets.
High school, there was a couple of different ways that my friends and like gas station was number one, and then the other one was like Dairy Queen or Subway. That was like right around our high school, and that was like a $5 spend back in the day when we would do that. And I think that that is what you're kind of touching on is we can toss around the figures all we want, but I think like whatever feels like $5 was back then. Do you know what I mean, to the person? Yep. And I think that whether or not it's the drive-through coffee place that ends up being the winner, I think that that will more or less calibrate people's appetite to spend. And then that will be the thing that maybe is a winner in 2026. I'm not saying your prediction won't pan out. I'm just saying that will be interesting to see that whatever these places decide is like, maybe it's $11. And now all of a sudden, like that sets the water line. And now everybody's trying to compete for that. Exactly what you laid out, like 45 minutes, $11. What can we do and have it be as profitable as possible?
Yeah, I think it's just it's just a totally generational shift. And I think there's an appeal to sitting in line and waiting. And I could be wrong on this, but it's like if you're sitting in the line and waiting with a bunch of people in your car in the drive-thru, you're kind of just chilling. You're on your phone, you're in your own ecosystem like you usually would be. You're waiting and you're just hanging out and chatting. And you're kind of forced into a confined space where you're talking to each other and being in each other's presence. And I just really feel like that consumer behavior, like I don't see that much of like I went out to a restaurant here that was like a chain restaurant. And I didn't see much young people. I saw people maybe my age or older, and that was it. I truly think this mobile type hangout in car, going to certain places, like they're just like willingness. Like I'm not willing, me personally, I'm never willing to stay 20 minutes, 30 minutes in line for a coffee. But I see a bunch of young people doing it all the time. I just think it's such a different generational shift, and it's just interesting to see because you would never catch me dead sitting that long for a cup of coffee. I get a black coffee from Starbucks or somewhere and I'm on the road. It's like, it's crazy.
It's like on the spectrum between like fully touching grass is like going in the woods and forest bathing and going for a hike. And then like being chronically online is sitting in your bed and scrolling TikTok. And so this is like just enough touching grass while still being like socially connected. All right, what's up? What's next?
All right. So we all know that fast casual restaurants like Chipotle and Sweet Green have come down a lot. And I actually kind of agreed with it. And I think that you're going to see from these groups is that in 2026, they're going to heavily pare down their menu offering. They're only going to offer winners that make money and drive sales. And I actually think LTOs are going to be very limited in the fast casual sector as there will be a bare bones focus on the end consumer spend. So I don't think you're going to see as many items launch in 2026. You may have a few. My prediction is there's not going to be as many because these businesses are going to pare down and get back to what made them good. And they're going to need to do is pare down their menu, really get costs under control, and offer it back at a price point that seems valuable. So I actually see big changes for Chipotle's, the Sweet Greens, where you're not going to see as much diversity in menu. And I personally don't think you need to have all that diversity in menu because people are coming there for one thing. And I think they've kind of lost some of that price point battle because they've tried to expand too much. And it's like, you don't need to try to expand too much. I remember when Chipotle, it was like, you want chicken? Do you want beef? Or do you want fajitas? And that's it. And now it's just like barbacoas and steak. I mean, maybe they have the barbacoa, but you know what I mean? Like they always have the different cheeses. And I remember when it was a big deal when they introduced their queso, and Sweet Green's menu is really expansive too. And while I think that it's nice sometimes, I think that they could use with some paring down as well. So I personally see fast casual restaurants taking a step back from what they offer and offering a more refined experience at a little bit of a lower price point to win customers back.
Not to totally like split hairs here, but I do think that Chipotle kind of did pare back. I mean, maybe I'm totally wrong here, but I think like in the beginning it was the burrito in the bowl, and then maybe a couple you could have it as a salad, and then there was maybe like 3 protein options, and then obviously the the toppings that we all kind of know with Chipotle. And then Chipotle kind of like went through what Sweet Green is currently going through, which is let's try a bunch of different stuff. Mm-hmm. And then I think Chipotle, by virtue of like the food health and sanitation scare that they had, combined with like shareholder pressure, I think they did pare back. I mean, I went into a Chipotle the other day and I looked at the menu, and it is so incredibly simple looking. Like it is like it
Mm-hmm.
fits on a page. Like not even just a page, but like the text is big on a page. And you compare that with something like Sweetgreen, where they're throwing everything to see what sticks. And I think that Sweetgreen's having a little bit more of an identity crisis than Chipotle
Yep.
is. I think Chipotle knows what it is. And I think that aside from maybe like doing some space upgrades to Chipotle, where you can kind of like actually want to maybe hang out in a Chipotle, maybe that's an interesting prediction. I haven't quite thought that through. But I think Sweetgreen, I totally agree with you, where it's like, what is working? What are some of our, whatever that quadrant is with like, different menu items that sell and ones that don't and that are maybe not so profitable? I can totally see that happening next year.
I think yeah, Sweetgreen, I agree. Chipotle is more in the sense of the LTO offering, where it's like, I think they're just not going to offer as much. I think they're really going to focus on. I mean, they're going to have to focus on getting customers back and being more profitable. So, but I
I
do
mean,
agree,
if
Sweetgreen is weird right now.
if anything, one of Chipotle's more defining moments over the past like 24 months was almost like this weird Taco Bell effect. I don't know if you remember when Keith Lee decided that you could take like two sauces at Chipotle, combine them, and then they turned into this like the crazy dip that you could use for a burrito or something like that. I can't remember the exact story. Somebody will correct me in the comments. But I think that's like a virtue of, you are like a Taco Bell and you just pare everything down so you only have your, half a dozen things that you can put in a tortilla, and then people have to get creative with the way that they combine them.
Totally agree.
What else you got?
My next take is that takeout is going to be experiential in 2026. And what do I mean by this? I remember vividly when I was in Chicago, I can't remember the restaurant, but during the pandemic, I went and got, I believe it was Thai food. And just there was like a little like piece of paper with instructions on how to heat up certain items and prepare certain items. And it was well thought out and given to the customer. I believe some restaurants are going to have more experiential forward like takeout dining experiences in 2026. If you look at the trends, like customers, there's a couple of things that I think back this up. One is the pricing on Uber Eats and DoorDash is just way too expensive. And I understand that people are always going to use it. I'm not saying no one's going to use it, but I think you're going to have price sensitive consumers that are even going to find it not worth going to use it Uber Eats or a DoorDash. I'll give you, like, for me, I wanted to order wings this weekend and I looked on DoorDash and I would have paid $28 more if I would have used the app to go for a mile delivery for wings for the football game this Sunday. So it's like, and I went and just picked it up. But for me, I think that experiential takeout is going to be a way for restaurants to kind of build brand and offer items to people who are low on time and that want to eat at home but also cannot afford the exorbitant fees that Uber Eats and DoorDash are serving. Your thoughts?
I remember when I was running the event production company, and this was, going into COVID, we had a team of 9 people. We had just leased an office in downtown Seattle that was bigger than the one that we were leasing before. And we were really, really adamant about like keeping people on payroll. And so what we did was we pivoted our whole business, because we couldn't do anything in person, to hosting online events. And it was really weird for my business partner and I, because we realized that like the adaptations that a lot of businesses made, I think, during the pandemic was like a shock, and everybody was having to like scramble around. But then we realized that it was like, wow, this is actually pretty profitable. And wow, this like really kind of scales. And wow, really, customers are continuing to come back to us, and clients are, asking us for more of this stuff and referring us to other businesses. And it was this funny conversation we had to have, was like, do we continue this like almost product of the pandemic going into like, even now that COVID is, like all the restrictions are lifted and everybody's back to doing in-person stuff, we had to make a very hard call on, do we decide to continue doing these online things? And I think that there's a lot of, whether the restaurant added grocery, or I think you and I both saw like different fine dining places do like really elaborate ways to like package up their food and give people instructions on how to plate it at home. And I think it's very interesting to see that like once everybody didn't have to do that, a lot of that stuff like just died and fizzled. And I love that we're talking about it now, because like people don't talk about it anymore. And so I'm curious to see like how people take the learnings from something like that, where it was a necessity. And if you really had to like first principles build something that was, experiential takeout, how would you do it? I'm excited to hear your thoughts on this next one, because this concept came up on almost every single, like research deep dive I tried to go down on trends for 2026. So what's your next point?
Fiber. Yeah. If you have been paying attention, fiber is coming up. And I believe, and this is backed by like where I work, where it's backed by like everyone is like pounding the drum on fiber. Fiber is going to be the next protein. And as a chef, I think, or as someone who serves food, like food to people, you should be aware of this. So as protein becomes an everyday asset, fiber will be the next big nutrition push for consumers. For an everyday person, eating fiber is key. And for those on GLP-1s, fiber is an essential for nutrition and satiety.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that really weird. Feeling full. So most Americans don't eat enough fiber. So, and I think we're going to, as we get this lens of, we had like the beef tallow protein heavy year, fiber's coming next. But what's interesting is for GLP-1 users, what I've read is that fiber's pretty much a necessity, nutrition wise. It helps regulate your body. It helps process the drugs better. It helps keep you fuller longer. It apparently helps with just the effects of GLP-1 from some preliminary studies. So fiber for GLP-1 users is a necessity. Again, I'm not a doctor, but that's what I've read. And fiber overall for consumers is going to be like the next big thing, whether it be through leafy greens or a bunch of other food items. But what protein has been the last 2 years, fiber is going to be the next 2 to 3.
I'm super curious to see where these sources that like come to be the, you know what I mean? Like the fiber sources that are the winners in 2026, and what are they? I have had
Someone's going to market vegetables as fiber.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like like eat several pieces of fruit a day, not, because it makes my gut health feel better. You know what I mean? Like there's a little bit of, and exactly to that point, if you're going to be eating a lot of like, protein is not maybe going to go 100% out of style, I don't think.
No.
And I don't think you're saying that. But I also think that like the addition of fiber as something that people almost do like that mental math on throughout the day of like how much fiber have I had. And similar to like protein bars being the kind of like easily transportable, convenient on the go source of protein. But if you really have the time, it's like you're going to make a steak at home. I'm very curious to see kind of like what those, winners and losers are. And I hadn't quite done the math on the weight loss thing being something that you can eat a lot of fiber. It makes you feel more full. And then that ends up being almost like a quote unquote weight loss hack, in the same way that like, people put under the desk treadmills as a way to kind of like get extra steps in. I think convenience for the consumer is going to be huge, and who those brands are. And similar to what I talked about in last episode, like the quote unquote artificial source of fiber is going to be counter trended by the like organic, fresh, natural quote unquote source that doesn't come in a package. Very interesting to see how this plays out.
I think specifically protein, I don't think protein's like going away. I think protein is like a built-in asset people are aware of, and fiber is the next new piece that they need to be aware of in their diet, which is like crazy to say 'cause it's such a key part of nutrition, but that's where we're at. And it's important to know because fiber is really essential. Next up for me, shock food media dies. So I think concepts like Mythical Kitchen are going to reign supreme in 2026 as the world becomes more negative, as everyone's stressed, the world's like falling apart. Wholesome food content or educational food content that adds value to the customer or the viewer will be what is held up. Aside from brands such as established hot ones, the food media ecosystem will reward content around food that leans more wholesome, informative, while shocking food media dies. You're people trying things and being fully disgusted, making gross food to get a shock out of someone, trying to go viral off of gross food. I think all of that goes in 2025 and is pretty much done. And that 2026 is going to be the year of informative food content or feel good, wholesome food content because it's something that's needed.
A little interesting that the shocking food content is maybe going to be one of the more easily able to be recreated with AI type of content. It's weird to say, but like usually when you see somebody trying something and they're, like panicking or whatever on camera, if that shows up in your feed because it's a viral video, you don't have an attachment towards that person. You're just like watching the car crash happen, so to speak. And I think I'll say this because I want people to continue to listening to the episode. I want to see our view duration go up here, but I'll have a kind of a dovetail off of this as one of my predictions, and I'm curious to see if you agree with it or not. So I'll leave it there, and then I'll bring it back up when it's my turn.
Awesome. My last realistic prediction for 2026 is cooks who leverage AI tools such as ChatGPT will win excessively. Use ChatGPT to manage costs, help with recipe keeping, other tools to give yourself a leg up across the industry. Do not use it though. Big caveat. Do not use it for recipe creation. I think there's this anti-AI stance in the food industry, and it's well warranted. But tools like ChatGPT and like these like chatbots are really great for admin tasks, not like doing them, but keeping yourself organized, keeping yourself remembering things, writing ideas down in, and I don't think enough cooks leverage them. And as I'll say in my more unrealistic predictions, there are a realistic thing happening right now is a lot of people from different industries are entering the food world. And what I think could set someone apart and that maybe doesn't have a cooking experience is the ability to record recipes and be more proficient in admin work. And it's almost like a leg up. So I really think it's vital that cooks learn to use a basic chatbot like ChatGPT to be able to keep up with these people that might not have the best cooking skills, but have a bunch of other administrative skills that can be used in a business. Because it's not just all cooking; it's half of it. The administrative side is a lot more than that. So I would advocate for learning ChatGPT and playing around with, and creating systems within it for yourself to be ahead of the game when these people start to get jobs in the industry.
I'll just drop this, and you folks in the comments can let me know, or send us an Instagram DM, or send me an email. Would it be interesting? We have toyed around with the idea of doing workshops in 2026 around different skills. And Ray and I use AI in various different ways in the business and in our personal lives. Would it be valuable for you folks to have us do an AI workshop to basically, like, maybe it's an hour, maybe we make it like a series and we do an hour a week for 4 weeks, just to kind of like do some preliminary upskilling, playing around, getting familiar with some of these tools, getting a project from 0 to 1 for you folks on an AI tool of your choice. And I think maybe there's something there where we can not just pontificate on it here, obviously make you aware of it. You can feel free to do this research on your own, but is there something where there's a little bit of accountability and almost like shadowing of how we use it and actually deploying it yourself, so it's not so daunting to get your hands on some of these tools? If that would be of interest, please let us know, because I think that is an interesting way that we can both cover these industry things, but then also like make it tangible and real for you folks. I don't know.
So that's all I had. What are your realistic predictions for 2026, Justin?
All right, 2026. Happy 2026 if you're listening in 2026. I want to start with restaurant tech getting legitimately great is the header that I picked here. I did a video partnered with a sponsor on my channel, the JK channel, and it was all about restaurant tech and kind of like the state of things going forward. And I've really been thinking about it ever since making that video. And Ray and I have talked about these like pie in the sky, almost like, I wish that the tech could do XYZ thing. Don't get me wrong. As I talk about in my video, it's gotten immensely better over the years, even since, like entering the industry and what, technology, it wasn't even existent. Like there was some tools, but like I foresee with people vibe coding stuff, with some of the tech companies getting really, really engaged in both like automation and AI, and we've had some of these other like technological things come and go. I'm very, very excited to see a couple of like sub points under this that I wrote down was loyalty. We talked about that in one of the more recent episodes on like, that is still a nut that has yet to be cracked for restaurants in a like really engaging, like true loyalty type of way. And there's a bunch of like issues there. We talked about the doing things that don't scale being a problem here, but is there a world where as we move into AI agents and as we move into a different way that you're going to discover things, and as we move into a different way that content could be maybe a little bit more engaging and you could do more rather than just watch a static video, is there a world where like restaurant tech can both make the consumer experience better and then also make the operator's experience better? Ray talked about admin stuff and how operational efficiency is how the sub bullet I chose, basically making it so that if you have a bunch of tasks that need to be done for the business to continue to operate in the way that it needs to, does that need to be something that you're spending 5 hours a week on? Or can a restaurant tech tool help reduce that to 45 minutes a week for you? I also am super bullish on this idea of like, we went from, I don't know if you remember this, Ray, like phone book, you have to call the restaurant, you have to like make a reservation using this incredibly archaic method. And then all of a sudden we moved to this kind of like e-commerce way of making reservations, the Open Tables, the Resis, the Talks of the world, where, largely the reservation, experience, quote unquote, looks the same. And then all of a sudden we saw that thing that we covered on the show of all these scalpers coming in and stealing reservations, and bots are now all of a sudden, like in charge of what tables get picked and chosen and then sold at a markup on the dark web. I'm maybe being a little bit exaggerating there, but I'm curious to see how, like a technology platform can make booking a table at a restaurant, scheduling an experience somewhere, how can they make that almost a little bit more like magical, so to speak? And is that a dedicated app? Is that a upgrade to a current, way that people are doing things. I sent you this story, Ray, offline. We're not going to talk about it here on the show. Maybe we'll link it in the show notes. But DoorDash launched a almost like AI discovery tool that they're using. And basically the idea is that it starts to learn a little bit more about you over time so that it can start to suggest different experiences for you. And the interface looks completely different from the way that, both DoorDash and then all of these other delivery apps look, where it's like you have the little icons on the top with the different cuisine types, and then you have your recent orders. I think all of this is going to make for a much more, it's going to be different from anything we've ever seen on, the current state of how things are looking. Also, it kind of has to be said, but I think like anytime that restaurant tech can offer like more consistent results, when I say consistent, I basically mean like better, faster, cheaper. Like anytime that can happen, I think that that's going to like squeeze out more margins for operators. And that's going to be like 2 thumbs up from us. And then I also wrote down like use cases where we haven't even forecasted the possibilities yet. Some of the examples that are given is like early days of the internet. People were talking about like, oh, what am I going to do? Like go to everybody's website someday? Like you would not have been able to envision Snapchat being a app back in the day because it was like broadband was really slow. You know what I mean? Or like the internet dial-up speeds were just like not up to snuff. People didn't have cameras on their phones yet. And so there's all this stuff that I think like we're missing because you and I are not wearing a AI wearable device yet. But like, I specifically think that when users are more keen on sharing their data, and it's like you have everybody's allergen information, you have, like a little bit more information on how people like to order toppings on their burger, you have the ability to like really deliver a better experience for them. And I'm just bullish on that, working its way into restaurant tech. And then the last one, will link it if I can remember to send the article to Ray. I read a really interesting post over the weekend on somebody who was talking about the idea of crypto is dead. And it's basically just this idea of like blockchain and crypto is basically just going to become part of the tech stack for people. And he was basically both lamenting the fact that like this crypto products for crypto enthusiasts is now going to be totally over. And we're seeing things like prediction markets and stable coins and all of these infrastructure pieces on Web3 and crypto and blockchain basically just being par for the course. And it's not going to be something that anybody touts as like, this is a product that's specifically for people in Web3. And that was something that like, I talked about this, I think 2 or 3 years ago in a playbook article that I wrote where it was like, you need to pay attention to this because this is going to come to pass. I thought it was going to be a lot faster than it ended up happening. But like all of this stuff happening behind the scenes is very, very interesting. And I think like once the tech is good enough, we're going to see some really exciting products.
I'm always surprised at how little of tech is still used. There's a ton out there. I used to do a lot of tech reviews for some websites I wrote for, and there's just a ton of great tools that I like. There's sometimes this pushback from restaurants to invest, and I understand that from a financial perspective, it sometimes can be tough to justify things, but you truly have at your fingertips now items like 7 Shifts, other restaurant tech that could like really make your operations more efficient and save you a ton of money in the long run. So I am always surprised at it. I think this is going to be the year that tech becomes a necessity just because of how financially strapped people are going to be. They're not going to waste their time banging their head against the wall because they don't have the money you don't have the money to cover your stubbornness anymore. You're going to need to invest in technology in your restaurant in order to be keeping lead in the industry. So that's my agreement with you.
The other one that I had coming up next is restaurant media becomes a role. I talked in the last episode about this idea of like head of in real life being a role that some tech companies are hiring for. I think that we obviously have examples that we can point to, but like for real, it's going to become a thing in 2026. And I have a couple of reasons why. So the first one is almost like a counterpoint to what I covered in the last episode, talking about influencers who will come in and tear down you as a business. And I think that restaurants creating content for themselves has been something that I think Ray and I have both been advocating for in some way, shape, or form. Maybe not total like Gary V post 10 TikToks a day type of content, but I think when you have dozens and dozens and of hundreds maybe of hours of content about you as a business and what you're about and how your operation works and who your team members are, it's very difficult for an influencer to come in and try to quote unquote tear you down in any sort of like real meaningful way.
Can I interject real quick?
Yes.
I think a key channel, which we've shouted out before, is Fallow. Fallow on YouTube is literally what you're saying right now. And I'll let you finish, but I just wanted to like, if you go on there for the last few years, they've published videos of them cooking the line, and it's been great. They've published videos where they created content in their kitchen. They've had I forget his name. He goes to the Michelin restaurants and you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, Alexander the Guest. Yes.
Yes, Alexander the
Yes.
Guest. They controlled the narrative for him coming to the restaurant, and instead of him just coming and doing a review, they made it into a collaboration. So like their media ecosystem made it so where even influencers are more likely to come to you and like collaborate and get your audience bigger and have their audience get bigger rather than just come in and like dump on you. Not saying that
Totally.
that he would do that, but yeah, Fallow is a great example for what you're saying. But go ahead.
And it's weird because it is this like preventative measure almost, because it's almost like in the early days of building a brand, of course, it kind of makes sense to put out content because nobody knows who you are. But I think it almost becomes this really interesting insurance policy slash decreases our customer acquisition cost slash decreases our marketing budget. Like, I think when you really see operators who map this out on paper and sees the benefits that ultimately stack up from hiring like either an individual or a couple different people to manage media at the restaurant, especially if it's like a restaurant group who can kind of like take this one person or this group of 3 people and almost like have them bounce around to the 5 different properties that they have. I think there's some real benefit that's going to be had from something like this. And certain restaurants might take advantage of this and like quote unquote share an individual, and that person might bounce around to, different places depending on, their ability to adapt and scheduling and all of these sorts of things. The other reason why I think this is possible now in a way that it wasn't before is that the tools are so ridiculously good in 2026. Even in 2025. I mean, like Ray and I being able to record a podcast like this from thousands of miles away and put it out on the internet is like a really, really cool thing that's like been around for ages. But as I'm thinking about like mountable cameras, audio solutions, lighting stuff that's like doesn't take up a bunch of space, is relatively inexpensive, has like much more durability than certain other products did
USB
over the
plug-in
years.
microphones where you could literally plug your mic right into here and it's like really great quality. You can just hold it up to a pan and get the sizzle. You don't like it's all there.
And not even that, but like we've seen the pushback to like the heavily produced like 6 DSLR camera angles. Those videos don't perform nearly as well as something shot on a phone. And I think that that's also something that like influencers do well, is that they are like more incredibly like, genuine and raw and authentic. Yeah, nimble. Yeah, like they have the ability to like get more and get it in a way that doesn't feel so staged because they're just using a phone and it's not so intimidating. Another point that, again, I'm not bashing anybody in particular, but maybe this is something for you to consider if you run a type of business like this. I think agency owners have conditioned restaurant owners into paying a retainer anyways. So like if you're already paying an agency to make content for your business, it's kind of like you have it in your head that you're quote unquote spending this money anyways. Why not bring it in-house? And again, like I push back on bringing things in-house if it doesn't make sense for you and your business and you haven't panned the numbers out right and you don't have an understanding of how much you're spending on marketing every single month and you haven't had any sort of scandal happen with an influencer and you're not worried about that, grain of salt, disclaimer. But like, that's why I brought up the restaurant group example. Because if, you have, 6 locations and you can hire 2 people, one is shooting, one is editing, and you can send them around to all of the different properties, it really, really matters there. Okay, so how can this affect chefs in particular? Because it's an important point that I'm glad you brought up fallow. I'm not saying every single person needs to go full fallow here, but I do think that chefs building an on-camera set of skills is a valuable thing that you can consider going into 2026. Because if you happen to start working at a place and they are interested in potentially like bringing something like this into the fold in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, it's something that is going to benefit the business. That's going to mean more guests for you to cook for. That's going to mean more longevity for you at that place. And potentially like increases in the business means that when it's time for you to sit down with your boss and ask for a raise, it's going to be more reasonable for you to do so because the business is doing better. It's like work in the environment that you have, not in the environment that you want, so to speak. And I know that there's a lot of pushback to people like, oh, I don't want to do the on-camera thing. I don't want to, like be cringe for a little while. But as Ray and I both can probably be testaments to, it's like, go watch my early videos. Go watch like
Most of my first Line Cook Thoughts podcasts are awful. I record them on my phone, and I was in my room talking like this and being nervous.
And so all of these are like skills that you can improve and that you can get better at, and that it becomes less cringe over time. And ultimately, like it makes it so that the guests that are going to come in and see you are going to be more excited. You don't have to be exactly like any person that you follow on the internet. Just like try to lean into more of what makes you you. Maybe there's another idea for a workshop there. But again, restaurant media in 2026 is something I'm excited to see.
I think the one thing I've noticed is that as the trend of just giving the ingredients has kind of killed the storytelling for some restaurants. And some restaurants need to tell their story. If you're using a really awesome locally produced, I don't know, butter that's made like near you, or you're pairing it with an awesome wine from a winery near you, or you're using like noodles that are handmade from a guy down the road. Like, tell that story. Don't hide behind the trendy asparagus, noodle, prime rib. Like, tell your story. Go on TikTok, camera to face, and be like, hey, this is the story for our special tonight, or this menu item. This is why we created it. This is why I'm passionate about cooking it. You'd be surprised how just that little bit of storytelling, that 1 minute on someone's Instagram feed, makes the world of difference. So
I love it. My next point is inflation makes another rise in 2026. And I don't think people are maybe going to be happy to hear this. I think Ray and I have been talking ad nauseum about the K-shaped economy. And disclaimer, I'm not an economist, and I could totally be wrong here. Maybe should have put this in my moonshot predictions section. But from what I've been seeing, the labor market worsening, so more people either like not able to find a job or unemployment going up, means the Fed will have to print more money. And that causes inflation in a lot of ways.
I just want to say where we're at right now is there's a lack of new jobs, but there aren't immense layoffs in proportion to, if you take out the government layoffs, which obviously are layoffs, if you take that off in the private sector, there weren't as many layoffs over the fall as maybe predicted. That does not mean they're not coming. We still have the end of the year, but it's in a weird spot right now, to your point, where it's like there aren't new jobs opening up as much as there should be.
And what I also wrote down was that decreases in cost due to automation will happen, causing deflation, which is obviously the opposite of inflation, which is what we ideally want to see in certain amounts in the economy. But I don't think it's going to happen in 2026 in the larger like scope of what people are talking about with, you know, we're going to have so many extra hours per day because we have robots cleaning our houses and everybody's driving around in a fully self-driving car and all of these mundane tasks that, you know, so many people are doing. It's going to create quote unquote abundance if you've kind of dug into any of those concepts. I think that's going to come. I just don't think 2026 is maybe the year. I would need to see more. I mean, like even some of these ads of some of these robots that are going to be in people's homes, it's like starts shipping in 2026. And the demos that they're doing is like, it's still piloted by a real person. And so I think that like, it's close, right? Like it's just not evenly distributed yet, but I don't think that it's going to be like real market penetration where it's like your aunt has one of these devices in her home and she's actively like gaining real productivity, meaningful time because of some of these things. And so that's, again, I don't like to say it. I don't necessarily think that it's like, again, I'm not in the Fed, but it's something that I just foresee in all of the headlines and articles that I've read.
Heard. Agree.
Next one. I wrote down that great chefs get killer collaboration opportunities. And so we've covered stories on the show over this past year of these big luxury brands opening, you know, pop-up stores or actual brick and mortar locations that are like real full-on restaurants with really, really cool chefs. I think this expands even further. And tech companies who hire a head of IRL, they want to work with a creative powerhouse to deliver an incredible experience, whether that's on an island somewhere or out on a farm or on the rooftop of their building in Manhattan. They're going to want to like really over deliver because they have invested so much in these like not on the internet type of experiences. They're going to hire a video crew to document the whole thing. They're going to have a wardrobe budget for people. Their decor budget is going to be like crazy. And I don't think that they're going to just hire, you know, XYZ catering company. Obviously that's going to happen in a lot of cases, but I think that the events that are really going to like make a splash from a PR perspective are going to be like, we hired XYZ, you know, chef who has 2 Michelin stars to do this event. And I think that being open to those collaboration opportunities, positioning yourself to like, is your email easily accessible? Do you have a page on your website that makes it so that people can see examples of events you've done before? Because chances are, if you're a chef who has any sort of like tenure in your career, you've probably done an event before. And so being able to like be open to some of those things, I think like the margins are going to be awesome. The, you know, like willingness for you to like be adaptable and think on your feet and work in a different venue and structure a menu in a way that's going to do well in an event style context. All of that stuff is obviously like that matters. But I think that the collaboration opportunities are going to be like more than, you know, Tiffany & Co. offering you to open a flagship location in Tokyo.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with that as well. Collaborations are big. I think chefs are going to have to find different avenues to grow their own brand. And so yeah, I agree.
The other one that I had, and this kind of dovetails off of your idea of the delivery experiences, I wrote down introverted meal experiences that go beyond just takeout delivered to your house. And so that I think is, more of a trend that is obviously when I talk about on this show, delivering, trying out different restaurants, trying out different menu items from places, getting them delivered or going and picking them up. I'm talking about it in the context of like sometimes value, sometimes experience for me and my wife and my older son, because my youngest son doesn't eat any food yet. But I think that this trend of people like living in a reasonable high rise apartment in XYZ metropolitan area and they don't have roommates because they're quote unquote introverted and they just want to be by themselves, the current experience for them is like a bag gets dropped off at their doorstep. And is there a world where they can be something a little bit more engaging for them? I think back to a restaurant here in Seattle called Canlis, who we've covered on the show before, but they, in the pandemic, did an experience where it was like small bites and then wine delivered to your house. And then later that evening, they did almost like a walkthrough of the wines with one of the somms. And so everybody in their individual homes was able to kind of like learn a little bit more about wine, taste the stuff, pair it with food. And there was something there that was like a little bit more. And to the restaurant, you're taking the thing that scales, the somm speaking on camera on a Zoom call to everybody, and you're making quote unquote more margin on that because your cost of goods, basically the, like the cheese and the charcuterie and the wine that you're selling, is a smaller proportion of the revenue that you were able to charge. And so all of that I think is very interesting to see how all of this kind of pans out with what I'm calling introverted meal experiences just for one, because I think that is an audience that is unfortunately growing. People are more lonely than ever, as the data would tell us. And I'm just kind of interested to see where it goes.
This is like that. This is like the Yum Brands report we covered last week, where they're seeing more and more solo diners go out. I mean, we're seeing it in the data already. So I would agree.
I think this touches on the thing that I alluded to earlier. People will have to correct me in the comments if I'm wrong here. You talked about Chipotle and Sweetgreen needing to kind of like get their shit together. You didn't say it exactly in that way, but that's how I'm phrasing it.
Yeah.
I had an interesting fast casual dot point here, which was fast casual offering meal prep, potentially with a subscription to increase the lifetime value of their customers. What do I mean here? Ray, did you see the Chipotle catering hack that went viral probably like 6 months to a year ago?
Yep.
So that was a thing that people were really trying to take advantage of. Chipotle offers catering. So if your office wants to have, burritos and bowls and whatever delivered, you have the ability to like go on the website, make a catering order. Somebody realized that, hey, I could just like get a bunch of Chipotle, either chicken or beef and guac and salsa and sour cream and shredded cheese and lettuce and tortillas delivered to my house, and I could just meal prep it for myself. I don't see a world where somebody doesn't come up with the idea that, yes, you're going to come here for lunch, but then as you pick up your lunch, we will give you 3 additional meals that you can then bring home with you that then can serve as, additional things throughout your week. So you're still quote unquote eating at Sweetgreen. It's just on your terms. It's on a way that you decide to choose. We can increase your variety throughout the week. Or maybe it's not, like for the person who's incredibly routinized, or they have their macros that they're trying to hit because they're super health conscious. It's like, why would I not, like quote unquote save time? And if I'm coming here every day to get the same salad or the bowl every single day, why would I not pack something up that I can get again? And then that offers something where it's, Sweetgreen plus Sweetgreen, convenience or whatever. And I know that I love the sauces here. I know that I love the menu items here. And then I can just pick this up. I know that Darden Brands did this with particularly Olive Garden, where if you wanted to go out and get another pasta to go from Olive Garden, it was incredibly reasonable from a pricing perspective because they know that they made, whatever revenue they needed to make on you when you came into the restaurant. And so all of that I think is going to like trickle down, trickle up. Again, how it pans out, we'll have to see. But meal prep from fast casual places is something I'm keeping an eye on.
I think it's criminal that they haven't done it already. So I think
I
on their end, I think it's like malpractice. They should be doing this. It's you understand that customers have a want for this. Do it. And I think Chipotle is a little bit easier. Sweetgreen has leafy greens. They die
Right.
quicker. Chipotle, I mean, obviously you have to have safe handling practices with rice and chicken and beef and all that, but cooked that lasts a little bit longer. It's like, yeah, like go like get into that market.
Well,
I think it's brilliant.
I mean, just really quick on that. I that's why I specifically wrote down the subscription model, because you can't tell me that if Sweetgreen knew that 250 customers at a specific location were going to order that type of salad to go, that they couldn't prep it in a way that it is much more travel friendly. It has some sort of like packaging that makes it so that the lettuce won't wilt so quickly. It has like maybe single service dressing things, and like all the mix-ins are proportioned in a way that it makes it much more convenient for somebody to take that to work. And then it ultimately becomes like almost like a status symbol where, oh, you brought your black bottom Tupperware from home. I brought my Sweetgreen meal prep thing. And then there's something there that they also lean into because of the brands that they've built.
Yeah, agree.
Okay. Next one, more regional, and I'm putting this in quotes because I don't want to get flamed in the comments here, and I just want to make sure that I'm being sensitive here. More regional dishes will be showcased / rediscovered / given the limelight in a move towards more novelty that consumers are asking for. And so what do I mean by this? This is like, you know, like individual areas of India, or this like maybe long forgotten pasta dish from Italy, or maybe this like Peruvian, you know, ingredient that people don't think to put on XYZ thing, but now all of a sudden they want to lean into it and use it a little bit more. I have a couple things that like make this more possible in 2026 in a way that, you know, like obviously we see it happen in certain dishes or concepts or whatever that bring it, you know, some love to something that maybe was a little underappreciated. But I think this is going to become possible due to cheaper content being able to be made and AI-driven storytelling that will make consumers smarter and more keen on stepping outside of their comfort zone. And so I've told this story in the past. A couple was launching a business here in Seattle, and they were concerned that nobody knew about the food that they were serving. And a big conversation we had when I was sitting across the table from them was like, we need to be thinking about educational content so that people can get up to speed on the specific dish that you guys are making. And then they, you know, like they did a really good job of like making sure that people understood what this product was for them. That was a big undertaking for them. I think as we're thinking about like search results coming up, like you get a thing in your feed that's going to say like XYZ ingredient is now the hot thing that your favorite pizza place is offering a thing on, you're going to have the ability to quickly like discover what that is, get a little bit of history behind it, and maybe watch a video around how it's made. And that's going to make you so much more likely to order the thing in a way that wasn't possible, you know, like 2-3 years ago. The second one is, and this is kind of a moonshot, bear with me, but I think there might be a Tabasco or a chili crisp or a Dijon mustard type product that comes from this trend. So somebody's going to bring XYZ thing to the limelight. And in the same way that, you know, like one of these like very beloved, shelf stable, adds a flavor punch, you know, like makes a certain dish interesting, is going to come all the way back around. And it's going to make it so that one of these products is going to like actually achieve some CPG success.
I would love to see the regional dish that blows up in 2026 be the garbage plate out of Rochester, New York. That would be amazing. No, I do agree though. I think the regionality thing is really big. You see it a lot with just how I think a lot of bigger brands have been trying to be more regional in their offerings and whatnot. And I agree. I think that being able to dive into the local food culture is like something that can be very effective that then scales to a national realm or national state. So you never know what's going to pop. And, you know, we see a lot of crazy things. So
next one I have is, I'm calling this full choice plus guided experience on both sides of the menu is the way to eat in 2026, as opposed to fully a la carte or a set tasting menu. So I want to give an anecdotal experience here. There's a restaurant. I interviewed the chef when the restaurant had just opened. The restaurant's called Tomo, and the chef is Brady Williams. He started off his restaurant as a tasting menu only place. If you look at this place called video on my channel, when I go to eat there, it is tasting menu only. He has gone through so many iterations of how he's decided to do his menu. And my wife and I last week, we went on a date night to Tomo, and that is currently how they break down their menu. It is a la carte options, but then on the one side of the menu, they have a family style service of their quote unquote favorite dishes that you can enjoy. They also have something that is like a miniature wine pairing, which is basically, they call it a wine flight. And it is $40, and you get a selection of 4 different wines that are like just really, really interesting things that the SOM team is excited about pouring. You counter that, or like talk about the things that Ray and I have been talking about with affordability and, you know, like people not wanting such long, drawn out dining experiences. And I think that what we really need to be thinking about consumers wanting and asking for is this, like, I want agency. I want to be able to choose what I want. That's the full choice, basically a la carte. Or I want you to decide for me. And I think that, like, usually you see one or the other. It is a full, you know, like a la carte menu or a set tasting menu. And these concepts that combine both, I think are going to do really, really well, because it's like you make it so that the consumer can ultimately, in the expense of time that they're giving you, they're coming to see you in person, they're gathering all of their friends, they're going to spend money. And it's like the people who cater to that and like offer a genuinely positive experience where people are like, man, that was so fun. Full transparency, my wife and I went for the I order off the menu, and we had a really, really good experience that way. But we were like very torn on like, do we do the, you know, set menu thing? And it's all sort of family style. Like, it's not this like, you know, hodgepodge, you know, like amalgamation of things. It's probably more profitable for the restaurant if you do the family style thing. All of this is just like very, very fascinating for me. And it's also a testament to like seeing that restaurant iterate so many times all the way around and landing here, and it being one of the better experiences we've had at Tomo. I think is just like really 2 big thumbs up for me. And so I'm excited to see where that goes.
And it gives you some controls as a restaurant from cost, where like you give the, not the illusion, you do give the customer the ability to choose. They choose items that flow together in a way that makes it very cost efficient in the end.
Well, because it might also benefit from, you know, like in a set tasting menu, what is the thing on the bottom of the tasting menu? Entire table must participate, and there's no substitutions, blah, 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 blah. This was not like that. Our server genuinely told us like, oh, if you want to do the family style thing, you can just add on the chicken wings on top of it. And then, you know, you guys can enjoy that too. And it's like, whoa, you know, like the being told no. Again, this is like this unreasonable hospitality thing that certain people that are listening to the show are going to roll their eyes and say, please don't tell me to do unreasonable hospitality in my business. But there's also something here where it's like, you know, people's, you know, desires are changing. Consumer sentiment is shifting. Like people want to see something a little bit different. And I think that there's something there that was just like incredibly fun to order in that way. They also coursed it out beautifully. That's the other thing that I just really want to emphasize is like, some people are like, yeah, sure, like do the a la carte thing. And then it's like you get the, you know, big meat thing like halfway through, you know, the dishes coming out, and you're like, what is going on here? And so it's like just a real testament to a kitchen having it together. And it was very impressive.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be good. So
that's all I had for my realistic predictions. Ray, let's do some quick hit moonshots, you and I both.
All right, so moonshot for me. So you'll remember the grocery play for restaurants. Here's my moonshot aspect to that. I think if restaurants go into grocery, let's go back to a Carbone, there will include incentives for in-person dining on their packaging. What do I mean by this? Carbone may include a code or a coupon, an exclusive code or coupon, that if you take to in-person dining, they will then redeem that offer. You can then redeem that offer and be able to get a special dish off the menu, money off your sale. This will target the customer base to lure them back into their physical restaurants to increase physical foot traffic. Now, maybe a Carbone doesn't need this, but I just use it as an example that restaurants will market their products in a way that maybe it'll be on the label, maybe it'll be proof of purchase. You then are incentivized to go back to the restaurant and actually visit the restaurant that you bought the CPG product from. And I think it could be a really smart way that I have not seen done, where you kind of create an ecosystem of buying product, going to a restaurant to buying product, to then incentivizing going back to the restaurant. So a use case in your home, you're like, oh my gosh, I have this label or whatever I have from the jar of sauce I bought, and I can go into the restaurant and get some money off for a cool product and experience. Sounds crazy, but I think it actually be a really good marketing play for restaurants.
I love this idea. I think that, you know, exactly to your point, what form it takes is maybe a little bit up for debate, but it kind of piggybacks off of my like restaurant tech getting better idea, because I think that like how the tech, like, why would you not just like offer the reservation link on the back of the jar? Do you know what I mean? Like, and not only that, but like, I don't know, based on how many jars you've bought, like you get better access to tables. You know what I mean? Like there's all these sorts of things we can spitball on that I think are just really interesting. Okay, what's next?
Starbucks collapses. The brand has overshot in the direction of takeout or to-go orders during the pandemic. They've been clamoring for years to get back to the third place or the third place of coffee. and they've had a rough year or two now, and they've basically kind of ruined their core brand proposition, where it went from the community coffee shop to like the grab and go coffee shop. And with all the competition from drive-through coffee, like we talked about before, to independent spots that do it invariably better, I think Starbucks collapses as a business. I think they're still around at the end of the year, but in a much worse financial spot with less locations and a brand that is not as prominent or as seen as in the best light anymore. Your thoughts?
I just want to timestamp this. So Starbucks' stock price at the start of this year of 2025 was $92, and it's currently at $89. So they're currently like basically flat for the year from a stock price perspective.
What did it start at again?
92, and
92?
it's at 80, and it's at 89 now. And
Okay.
so interesting to see how this ends up. And it's currently Google currently has it at $36 billion in revenue for 2023. And so we'll see kind of where that goes as a fun timestamp. What else?
Yeah, I've just covered them a lot this year, and I think they're a brand that is trying to figure it out. And I think they're so large that if you can't figure it out soon, you're going to collapse. And again, it doesn't mean Starbucks is going to close, but they're just going to not be as prominent. All right, next up, kitchen applications increase at a historic rate. I covered a story earlier this year that AI is affecting a lot of college graduates. There's a big lull in opening jobs, like people being hired into different companies. And I think kitchen, the classic entry level job, will see a lot more people trying to get into them. So as AI cuts out the tech sector, those not in the food world will clamor to positions all across the industry. I predict we will see a 5-year high in kitchen applications, but unfortunately not hiring. So we're going to see a lot of people trying to get into kitchens, but there will not be the jobs to sustain them, and it's going to be a negative year for them.
I'm curious to see like how the food industry people end up getting more efficient, and if this tech, like automation and admin reduction, and maybe like if consumer sentiment wanes and restaurant aren't as busy, like the justification to hire more team members is not there, and so that creates a little bit of a problem. If we see the opposite happen and the winners keep on winning from the restaurant group side, and they need more locations, and they need more like foot traffic in some of these places, return to office becomes even more prominent than it already has been over the course of this year. Maybe it's the opposite. I don't know. Like because I've certainly had so many people take Total Station nomination who have come from other industries, and they're like, I need to upskill myself quickly in how to behave and how to operate and how to move in professional kitchens. And it's really, really helped them. And so that is something where, and they end up being great employees, right? Because they have like organizational skills. They know how to communicate, like all of these things that somebody who has just come up in kitchens might need to build in the way that the tech person did not have to build the standing on the line, skills. It's just very interesting to see the discrepancy there. I don't know, man, like agreeing with you that it's a moonshot here, but like traditionally kitchens have been great to work in because you can take this skill set anywhere, right? Like you land in any, city in the world and you can get a job somewhere. We'll have to see.
I believe chicken wings are going to have a year. With beef prices skyrocketing, chicken wings become the go-to burger item on menus, and more brands such as Wingstop, which is crushing it right now, see even bigger gains. My other prediction with chicken wings is that the Buffalo Bills will win the Super Bowl, and the buffalo wing becomes the main chicken wing flavor across the country. Maybe wishful thinking, maybe hopeful thinking. We'll cry if it doesn't happen. Do think chicken wings are going to have a giant year this year.
I love it. And I also think that like it's the perfect combo to what you're talking about with like celery and carrots on the side, because it's fiber and protein. And so this is really like tying it all together. But yeah.
You see the success of Wingstop. There's many journals I've read where they think that Wingstop is poised to be like the big winner out of 2026. And I think if beef prices continue to be the same, like chicken wings have become so popular, and not that they've like, you're just seeing a lot of chicken wing right now, and I think that it's going to be a chicken wing crazy year. So
I love it. What's next?
Cookbooks such as Pro Chef will see increased sales as scrappy consumers look to relearn cooking techniques. The days of TikTok recipes will die, and they will experience pushback as more users actually attempt poorly built or maintained recipes, and they will just be displeased with that. So at-home cooks are going to find that the AI slop recipes, the poorly thought out TikTok recipes, and recipes that don't work are not worth their time and actually are costing them money, and they go back to tried and true resources, whether it be cookbooks or reputable online recipe creators that give them true recipes. I think the era of slop recipes or weird TikTok recipes is dead because people don't have the money to waste on it and they don't have the time or wish or want to waste on a recipe that was made by an AI bot that doesn't have cooking experience or by someone that doesn't have the recipe thought out and only did it to get clicks and likes and views.
This literally came up as you were talking, and so grain of salt. That's good that this is in the moonshot section. I think about, Ray, you and I probably saw how recipes get tested at a place like Culinary Institute of America, and how they get poured over and how they get remade multiple times, and they have other people make them and they check the results. I've also met with certain creators who recipes are their core business. Like they have a really profitable newsletter where they're sending out recipes weekly. They publish their own cookbooks. And then you counter that to, I think, what you're kind of talking about here, which is creator makes something and then in hindsight tries to write the recipe from memory. And they're not retesting it. They're not having it, like put in a cookbook. They're not having somebody else actually kick the tires on this thing to make sure that the thing that they made on video is what actually gets made here. Small moonshot add-on for you is there a world where there is almost like how, people on Discord or people on YouTube or on Twitch have like mods for their chat? Is there a world where there's actually a role now to be a recipe tester / culinary support person for one of these big creators in a way where like XYZ Binging with Babish makes the big recipe, and your job as the person who's going to support some of these things. We've interviewed Kendall Beach on the show before. She actually works as culinary producer for Binging with Babish, but I'm talking about like it is a remote job that you can have, and you can actually have multiple creators that you're working for to both test their recipes and then open up a level of comms from that person's audience to say, can I make this without onion and how would you change it? A real person is going to answer those things. And then that makes an AI database smarter, and then that can answer the questions in the future. This might scale in some way, shape, or form. I just think it's interesting to see how this might play out.
Well, it's like the reversal of the death of expertise, where it's like we actually need expertise back on the menu because we need people to lead. And I also think of that one, I'm blanking on his name, that creator that tries all these like cheap things on TikTok to see if they're true or not, where he's like banging his credit card.
Right.
And it's like, and that's very useful. Like I've used his page for things, and like you kind of need that for recipes.
Totally.
My next moonshot prediction: AI recipe bans are coming into kitchens. What do I mean by this? Kitchens will create AI ban policies on recipe creation. Not other functions that help with admin, but pure AI recipe creation will be banned by restaurants. You will start to see businesses banning any use of AI recipes, which could be grounds for firing or termination. If you are a cook and you or your chef tells you to make a recipe and you just use AI to make the recipe, you can be fired for that. Because I'm not saying that is like what is happening now, but I think like bans like that will happen to avoid the lack of being able to create a recipe or creating recipes that make no sense or put customers in danger. So I think AI recipe bans are coming for professional kitchens.
I think that this is going to run in tandem with the AI tools getting better. And that is just going to be the super curious thing to see, like, is there that valley of despair where the tools are quote unquote good enough where it can kick you out a recipe that's like reasonably close, but it has some hallucinations or the calculations are just a little bit wrong. I was actually talking with a company earlier today about this just problem of the first party information being just a little bit either too hard for AI to read or like genuinely wrong. And then the AI doesn't have the intelligence to go in and fix the problem. So what do I mean by this? You take a photo of a recipe from your Moleskine notebook and you had 17 grams, but because your 1 in the 17 kind of looks like a 7, it logs it as 77. And so now the AI tool is like, what do you mean? Like, this was a 7. And you're like, no, dude, like, this is wrong. It's like, who was wrong in that scenario, right? And so we have to like find a way to bridge that gap where maybe there's a better review process or like all of these things. And that might be something that we cover in, an upcoming workshop when we're talking about using some of these AI tools in the state that they currently are. I totally agree with you. Like, you're going to have situations where something's just totally unpalatable or due to consistency concerns, like a restaurant just gets in total hot water. And then it comes out that the reason that happened is because of an AI recipe problem. And then it's going to be sweeping policies across the board.
I think that if you are a restaurant that was named best in the world and you've consistently been on top of your game and someone comes in and says, hey, you're not on top of your game anymore. In my mind, that chef would it would burn a fire under them to be back. And you predicted this when we reported on it, and I agree. And I just wanted to bring it back. I think Alinea regains their third star this year with Michelin. I think they are going to look at their menu, look at their menu construct, look at how they do food, how they approach food, how they maybe where they've gone wrong, and I think they regain their third star. I don't see the Alinea group under Grant being a restaurant that's a 2 Michelin star restaurant, and I think it's going to repivot Chicago back into. And I don't think Chicago's lost this per se, but having Alinea back at 3 stars just elevates Alinea. And then I'm not predicting maybe the star loss, but with EMP's switch in how they're operating or their menu switch, I wonder if they're going to retain their third star. I'm not hoping that they lose it, but just with the amount of noise and the amount of switch, like maybe the Michelin guide had already like been there by the time they made their change. I wonder how they go into the new year. So, but your thoughts on Alinea getting its star back?
I've kind of talked about both, but just, to set the record straight, I certainly think that like Grant is as talented as they come, and his presence in the restaurant, if he decides that that's the way he wants to take it, is going to be just like really exciting to watch. And I'm very interested to see what that case study looks like, because as we're seeing Michelin expand more, I think us wanting an updated framework for the meta of Michelin, as I've kind of talked about on this show, is going to be really valuable, right? It's basically like if you've ever watched a video game where like a speedrunner figures out like a new way to like go about beating the boss. It's like everybody's going to watch that, and everybody's going to take those insights and bring it into how they play the game. And so for us to see like how Grant decides to change Alinea, if he does, and if it ends up working and he gets the third star back, I think everybody's going to kind of like perk their ears up and pay attention there. And we will obviously like document that if and when it happens. And then on the 11 Madison Park side, I think I said this initially when it happened. I take the other side of this. This is not like, me bashing Ray's prediction. I just don't think that like 11 Madison Park is a great 3 Michelin starred restaurant as one that serves protein. And to me, if they were going to lose a star, it was going to happen during the vegan season. And it didn't happen. And so they know how to be a really killer restaurant that serves protein. All the signature dishes are the protein ones. And even that Bloomberg review that we talked about, the highlights for that writer were the proteins. And so I'm a little bit less keen on seeing that one play out, but we'll see. Happy to be proven wrong.
My second to last moonshot is airport. One of the go-to restaurants next year is going to be out of an airport, or an airline is going to win because of their food quality. I have seen such tremendous gains. I think of the Houston Hobby Airport. I think of the Chicago Airport that I'm near. I think that airport food has been going and rising for the last few years, and I think airline food has been as well. You look at Shake Shack in the sky and whatnot, and I think airline and airport food is going to have a massive, not upgrade, but it's just going to glean more attention with airline travel being like totally janky right now, and delays, and you don't know what's going to happen with the government shutdowns and everything else that's going on. I think people are spending more times in the airport per visit, and so therefore the food is going to actually get more insight because of this unfortunate reality that people are spending more times in airports. So I think airline and airport food is going to see a boom in attention and popularity next year.
I think we've covered, or maybe I covered it just in the newsletter, this company called Wonder. I'm sure you did a little bit of research in these guys, Ray. And they had like a appliance acquisition, which was one of these, ovens that is like a microwave plus a convection oven. And so they can achieve really, really fast results that, are better than what you would achieve normally in waiting for something to bake or waiting for something to get crispy in some other means of conducting heat. And I was kind of surprised that they wanted to go into like quote unquote retail, or like almost competing with grocery or competing with, like small, independent restaurants. Because to me, like, and they did talk about this in the story that I covered there, which was like, they're going for hospitals, I think is the one that they decided to go after. But exactly to your point, if the tools get better and some of these locations that are basically benchmarked on speed and affordability, and like nobody's like really trying to quote unquote have an experience at an airport when their flight starts boarding in 20 minutes. They just want their food as quickly as possible. It's an interesting dilemma, and I'm super curious to see, like, with the success of Rick Bayless in the O'Hare Airport, I was always shocked to see that, like, there's been few other there's been a few other concepts that have done reasonably well, but like that like really made headlines when they opened and were serving such high quality food.
Wolfgang Puck is another one of those that is just like really prominent in airports. All right, my last moonshot. The YouTube chef title finally becomes akin to how being on Food Network was viewed. So I'll give the example of my mom asking me, do you want to be a Food Network chef? I think the next generation is, do you want to be a YouTube chef? The reason I say this is the Oscars announced that for the year 2029, they will be hosting the show on YouTube. And so, as more prominent old media assets become YouTube central, the idea of being a quote unquote YouTube chef finally gets the reputational right it deserves.
I love that idea. I think that it is this transition we're seeing across so many like legacy media players, and it's one of those things that like I also kind of push back on it with people saying like, what is that quote that Thomas Keller says? Like, I've reread Fine Dining's obituary like 20 times or something like that. It's kind of the same with like legacy media. Like, I've read that obituary so many times, but then you have all these data points with like the most recent presidential election here in the US being like the quote unquote podcast election. And then you have, again, that data point I did not know, the Oscars hosting on YouTube in 2029. And then you have all these other ones that were like internet awards, right? Like the Streamy Awards, you know what I mean? Like these other, you know, like accolades don't touch the internet, so to speak. But then you look at the actual numbers and how people like YouTube is the most watched thing on TVs now. Not Netflix, not cable, YouTube. And it's like YouTube on TVs. It's not even on mobile devices. You know, like one of the bigger places where people watch things is on their TV. Shout out to you if you're watching us on your TV right now. But
yeah, comment below if you're watching us on your TV.
Yes, please. Yes, please. Great predictions, man. I'm going to go into my, it's a pretty short list of moonshot predictions, and I'll go through these kind of fast because I know we've been recording for a while. First one is there will be an advertisement, like there will be an actual genuine attempt to market your concept as a fully human restaurant experience, and they will charge accordingly in 2026. And when I say this, this is like me saying this early because I kind of have brought this up before, but I'm just trying to map out the direction of progress in thinking through how humanoid robots make their way into hospitality experiences. I went to a conveyor belt sushi place the other day. My son was like totally enamored about the fact that there was like a robot that was carting himself around the restaurant delivering drinks to people. And I think that, you know, like that is like a very crude example of, you know, like one singular task that this robot does.
The fact that you said the robot was carting himself around the restaurant, not itself. They've already got you, Justin.
Yeah, exactly. I just think that there will be a point where people are like so fed up with social media, so fed up with the internet, so fed up with robots. They're surrounded by them in their homes. They're in their workplaces. They're on the trains with them. That there is going to be a fully human restaurant experience that people will advertise, and they will be able to charge accordingly. That's, I think, is going to be the interesting thing where everybody's talking about costs going down for all of these restaurant experiences. And to have a fully human one is going to be really expensive, and it's going to be a status symbol. That's an interesting thing that I'm thinking about.
I like that. I haven't thought of that, but I like that. And I totally see it happening.
Next one that is like, again, directionally maybe correct, but after things that you've sent me and things that I've anecdotally experienced, at least in the city that I live in, Michelin completes the US as a guide is my moonshot prediction for 2026. And I think the reason behind, you know, maybe this happening in 2026 is we've talked about in 2025, so many areas regionally have been added to the guide. We've also talked about pushback financially from certain jurisdictions and geographies where they're saying, I don't want to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for this. I'd push back and said that the ROI on that spend, you know, like I think it's going to be there. I think we've seen examples of it being there, but I think that industry pushback, so chefs and sommeliers and producers and real estate people are going to say, city, tourism board, WTF, like, why can we not have a Michelin guide? Why will you not spend this?
Happening in Buffalo right now.
Totally. And so then, and also it's going to be increasingly obvious that the success of other markets seeing the Michelin guide come in, it's going to turn into this thing where it's like, dude, like, look at them. Like, look at what they were able to accomplish. Look at how the city has changed. Look at how these chefs are finding success and restaurants are thriving. Again, could be totally proven wrong here, but I hope that Michelin sets it on their roadmap. I'm sure they have some sort of internal way to track this, that they will put it on a big, you know, like image and say, the Michelin guide is fully representing the entire United States. Maybe not including Alaska and Hawaii. I don't know. We'll have to see where that goes. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's happening. I think the only pushback I think they would have already had this if the tourism boards in a lot of cities, major cities, were willing to pay. And so it'll be interesting to see with the success of the new guides and the financial incentives of the new guides, it's not even a Michelin push, it's an adoption from each city's local tourism board on doing it. So, but I think it could happen. If not 2026, at latest 2027.
The year is 2015 or 2016. I can't quite remember. It is March, and it is very dark and dreary in Norway. And my executive chef comes to the whole team and he says, hey, we're really slow right now. I want each of you to pick a place to go stage, and I want you to go work there for a week and then come back and teach us all what you learned there. One of my coworkers went to a butcher shop. Another coworker went to this place in France. I decided that I wanted to go to this restaurant in Stockholm that had 2 Michelin stars called Frantzen. I went there and had an incredible staging experience. I got to meet some really cool people. I got to eat at Frantzen. It was really, really incredible. And then all of a sudden, fast forward to 2025, 10 years later, Bjorn Frantzen is the only chef in the world who has 3 Michelin starred restaurants. And I don't think people give him enough credit for it. And I think the reason is because he doesn't have a masterclass on Masterclass. He doesn't have a line of cookware that he's, flexing and have a juice drink and have a, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm specifically dunking on Thomas Keller here in kind of a joking way. I love Thomas Keller's commercial success that he's been able to achieve. But I think in 2026, people will get smart on Bjorn Frantzen. He has restaurants in Dubai, Singapore, and Stockholm that all have 3 Michelin stars. He does not have a representation in the US yet, or Canada, or, South America, or insert, like this side of the world. But his success in fine dining, I think, is like incredible. It is to be studied. It is like super admirable. Obviously, he's gone through, like so many iterations of like having to renovate the place. He's gone through staffing changes. He's gone through so many things at that business and restaurant group. But I mean, like, people give Alain Ducasse and Gordon Ramsay and Thomas Keller the flowers, but Bjorn Frantzen, like, objectively is like, arguably the best chef in the world right now. And I just think that I hope people get smart on him in 2020. And it might not happen, and that might totally be the thing that is like he continues to stay, quote unquote, under the radar because he doesn't want to be that commercial success in the way that some of these other chefs have turned themselves into.
Yeah, I mean, it's impressive what he's done, and he does fly under the radar. Maybe this goes viral on TikTok or YouTube, and he finally gets his due because of you. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy to have 3 Michelin star restaurants. It's insane, and yet he's doing it at a very high level and consistently and over a long period of time, which proves out his track record. So,
2 more that kind of like piggyback off of this like success with Michelin. We have the Knife Edge show on Apple TV that documents a lot of restaurants. Basically, like, I just want 1 star. Like, I just want to open. And I just want to find success with having 1 Michelin star because the way that they position it in that show is that it is obviously really cool to get the award and all the benefits that come with that. But like from a business perspective, that will make sure that this restaurant that I'm operating can continue to stay open. I want to advocate for almost like the opposite, not the opposite of that, but a different version of this, which is I think in 2026, we will see a maniacal attempt at another achievement like this. This is bringing attention to a region. This is aiming to get 3 Michelin stars right out of the gate. We've obviously seen examples like Somni, who like on their first year being open, and I know that there's a little bit of like controversy there because they were open and then they closed and then they reopened in a different location. I think you kind of get what I'm saying when a real push, a real like, I don't care, we're going for this. This is going to be a really harsh environment. And I think that everybody kind of like swung the other way, bashing on Noma. I'm not saying I want to see this happen. I'm more saying like, everybody's seeing Knife Edge. Everybody's seeing the success from Michelin. Everybody's seeing, 3 Michelin stars be this thing that like certain restaurants are almost having to apologize for being harsh work environments. And I think as we get into a place where like that starts to become a little bit like people, it fizzles out. I think we might see a resurgence of like, holy shit, like this is a crazy work environment. And oh my God, you worked at XYZ place in 2026. Like that must've been crazy. I think that will happen going forward. I also wanted to add that when we do see that attempt, it will have a more sustainable lens to it. And I don't know if you're familiar with this concept, Ray, but it's like you're going around the circle. So like it's like the pendulum swinging, but it's like you kind of go around, but it's actually a 3D animation. So you're spiraling up. And it's this idea of like, it will have more sustainability to be maniacal about something like this because it's going to be a chef plus type of leadership structure. So it's going to be a Will Gadara and a Daniel Hume type of situation. It's going to be a, like the chef and a incredibly talented som or an incredibly talented, like farmer or, insert thing. But I think, again, I just want to make it really clear. I'm not advocating for this maniacal thing. I just think that there's like, for whatever reason, people like being pushed. People like, like having that intensity. People, like there's a little bit of that I think there's a large enough cohort of people who will kind of like join along for something like this. But I think it will have more legs and sustainability because the economics will be better. The concept will be more dialed in, but it's going to be really hard because for whatever reason, like there's still space for that in the industry.
Oh.
Okay. I wrote down underutilized commercial real estate, so warehouses and offices, will be turned into food depots, is what I'm calling them, that integrate with full self-driving cars. And so what I'm foreseeing if this comes to fruition, is what I'm calling commuter meals. And so like your car will pick up something for you on the way to picking you up because you have scheduled a pickup for you at 5 o'clock from work. And so on the way to coming to get you, it will stop at one of these food depots, get your favorite XYZ, your Ray's buffalo wings. And then when you get into the car, dinner will be ready for you. And then you can eat it on your 35-minute commute home. Very interesting concept that I don't think we've fully played out yet. And the second one, and I kind of got this idea off of your like sitting in line for 20 minutes waiting for a coffee with your friends. If you have an experience where every single person can be involved in the vehicle because the car is driving itself, is there a world where we could have a quote unquote road trip experience with food? And so all of us are used to stopping at the gas station and having the, you know what I mean? Like the packaged snacks and, soda that you're going to drink. Is there a world where along the roads you can stop and actually get like a really, really high quality meal and it just gets brought into the vehicle drives up and picks it up and it just keeps going because you don't have to stop because you can just like keep going on the road trip. And it's almost like that might plan out in an actual road trip, or it might be something where Ray, you and I decide that we want to go into this road trip experience and we're going to drive along the coast for an hour, but there's going to be food and drink served to us in the vehicle, maybe with stops along the way. Just an interesting concept with full self-driving and that we haven't calculated yet because everybody, at least one person has been needed to be in charge of driving along the way.
During the government shutdown, I actually had my flight offered to be canceled because it was unlikely it was going to take off. So I went on Amtrak and I just sat there and I kind of went down a rabbit hole of the train rides, and there's a 52-hour like train ride from Chicago to California, and there's but the dining wasn't that great. And I just sat there and like it would have been so cool. It would be so cool if we had the ability to have high speed rail or a high speed way of traveling, but also like stopping at each spot and trying food and trying the different locale. So like because we're such a car first country, then that might be actually the next step.
The next one I had that kind of is the moonshot in the moonshot section because I don't think it's exactly the same as chefs getting collaboration opportunities. I wrote down collaborations will be greater than new products for some of these like bigger brands, and brands will look to trade audiences rather than reinvent the wheel. And so what I mean by this is instead of saying like Chipotle needs to not do salads and bowls and burritos anymore, we need to create a new product. I think they're more likely to collaborate with, XYZ company and have a special burrito. And this kind of pushes back on your prediction that there won't be LTOs as much. I think that if they're going to add variety and novelty to the menu, it will take the form of a collaboration rather than, again, trying to create a new product. And the quote that I kind of come back to on this is Naval's, aphorism on this, which is great products look roughly the same because they got it right. And so that's something where it's like the form factor of a sandwich or a burrito is like so recognizable and good that reinventing the wheel does not have as much marginal, increase in the user experience. Like keep the burrito, add the regional sauce to it, and then that ends up and collaborate with another brand to share audience. That is going to be the way that people, ultimately find growth in 2026 because we ultimately still want to have those hedonic experiences. And again, that novelty. And so again, a little bit of a boring quote unquote moonshot, but I think that we aren't going to see as many new products in 2026.
Well, I like the site you had written here that it's like brands will look to trade audiences rather than reinvent the wheel. I like that idea.
Yep. Okay, next moonshot. We talk about meat prices. Ray talked about the chicken wing potential. I have an interesting idea of there was a company, there's so many. One was called Crowd Cow. And it was a company that basically every single person who wanted to order meat in large quantities at wholesale prices could order online. It was basically like a pre-order. And once the entire cow was purchased, everybody's order would go through and then you'd get your meat delivered. We're also seeing, again, these prices skyrocket. People going to the grocery stores are opting to either eat less meat or different cuts of meat. I can see, because people have been so accustomed to paying XYZ price on protein, whole animals could come into restaurants and the restaurant could be able to sell high quality protein as another revenue stream. Again, I don't know the semantics around this, if there's some sort of like license you need to have to do something like this. I know that there's so many things with like, if you're going to butcher or slaughter, you need to have, like the FDA come and check you out. But I think that all of this is priming for, like restaurants to have more novelty across their menu. It also, from a sustainability lens, makes them look like rock stars, because it's obviously like, we're not just using the ribeye and, throwing everything else away. And then I think it's also from a trust perspective, exactly what you were talking about with, you scan the QR code, you go into the restaurant, and now we increase the lifetime value of you as a customer. It's like, hey, you came in and you had this beautiful steak. We're actually taking the XYZ other cut from this, and we're actually able to package it up in this really nice butcher paper, and you can take this home if you want, and we'll package it for you in a really nice way. Maybe even not even after a meal. Maybe it's just like, hey, I really trust this restaurant. I love the way that they handle things, and this is the only place where I can get this beef, this pork, this lamb, and that's going to be something that I trust and actually like invest in. And then as the restaurant, like, oh my God, phenomenal revenue stream for you as a business. I just haven't seen anybody do that yet. I'm sure somebody in the comments will point to somebody who's already cracked this nut, but I just see it being something that like you regularly will think about doing in your week or monthly grocery shopping.
And because of prices and whatnot, also with whole animal butchery, you might have customers wanting to try different things even on a menu. So,
well, even like I'm sure you've seen like some of the organ supplements, like that in and of itself has gotten people more into like, I'm open to liver now. I'm open to different, awful cuts. And that is something that I'm, maybe a little bit more open-minded to, that if I'm going to get it from somewhere, I don't want to get it from, some place on the internet or a market that I'm not really so sure of. These guys served it to me in a way that was genuinely delicious. Can I get that same product? And the restaurant can also benefit from that because they just take the markup on it and they win. The last one that I had is maybe like more of an incomplete thought, but it was this idea of like a mobile kitchen being something that maybe brands or high performing restaurants lean into. This is kind of coming off of my experience at Mad and seeing how the team at Noma was able to execute like so many different chefs' vision out of a tent on an island in basically a plot of grass. And so the ability for some of these restaurants to like be open at, I play a lot of pickleball, tennis, like the US Open in particular has become like a who's who for people to go to and experience food and drink. They charge like exorbitant prices for these things, but people just want to have a good time. They've already paid XYZ amount for their ticket. And the ability to, I had this idea, Ray, back when I was doing pop-ups, to like, should I get a food truck and just do like multiple courses in, next to a beautiful mountain lake or something like that? And just set up a bunch of tables, and like, that's a really cool dining experience. And so this idea of like mobile kitchens being something that like you can hire really, really great brands for. And again, those chefs being able to think on their feet and adapt and deliver a cool experience there, I think could be a super profitable venture for people going forward. Again, this is like, maybe more on the, event in real life person, because they're going to have so many, ideas, and they're going to be like so constrained by like XYZ venue. I think like the mobile kitchen idea, setting one up for your business and being able to say like, yeah, we can be there. We have the inventory for that. Instead of needing to say, no, we have to host at the restaurant. And then you say, oh, sorry, our restaurant can only seat 45 people. It's just going to totally change the dynamic for people. And I'm just excited to see what happens.
Be interesting to see if it happens. And yeah, I think it's a great idea to be able to just have that versatility show up, and you have a recipe set that's really geared towards that. I think that could be a win.
We went really long. Where were we wrong? Where were we right? Where do you agree, disagree? Please let us know in the comments. I hope everybody has a really, really phenomenal end to 2025, particularly if you're taking care of people on New Year's Eve. I know that those nights can be fun, because if it's a set menu and things are going really, really smoothly, it can be a relatively straightforward evening, or it can be total chaos. Please let us know how things are going for you, and I wish all of you the best of luck going into the next year. Thanks to Ray for all the work that you do on this show, and I'm really, really excited to bring you folks more content in 2026.